Okay, so the thing about climate change that I feel is not talked about enough is things like this, where in Colorado, my lilacs already bloomed and now they're covered in snow with more expected later today. 3 to 9 inches, in fact, at the first week of May. And here's the thing, a May snowstorm in Colorado is not uncommon at all. That is like still within our last frost date. That's not actually out of the ordinary. However, I'm just knocking the snow off, so hopefully all these branches don't break. However, what is out of the ordinary is the fact that all winter, literally all winter, until the last 2 weeks, our average temperature was like 50, 60 degrees. Like, the amount of times I went out and about in a t-shirt in February, January, March is insane. Even up on the mountains. I mean, I went skiing in Utah in the beginning of March, which normally it's being buried with snow still, and it was 55 degrees at the summit. That's insane. That's the part of the equation that has changed. But here is why it's concerning. Because like we've seen, things start blooming earlier. Things start leafing out earlier. Trees this time leafed out about a month earlier than normal. And then when you get a late season heavy wet snow like this, you have a lot more issues with breakage and with all sorts of collateral damage. And if it were a normal season and it had still been chilly and just starting to warm up right now, and we had an abnormal, not even an abnormal, but a late season May snowstorm, the damage to plants and other infrastructure wouldn't be as severe because things wouldn't have started acting like it was already summer. But there's an old wives' tale that says when your lilacs leaf out, that is when you should plant your cold season annuals like lettuce and spinach and stuff like that. When they start to flower, that's when you can plant your warm season annuals like tomatoes, which luckily all of my seedlings are still safe and sound indoors. I did not plant them out yet, but a lot of people were tricked and a lot of people did. And this is one of those snowstorms where, again, you shouldn't plant until your average last frost date has passed. However, climate change is not only going to make things overall warmer, but it's going to be disrupting weather patterns. And the polar vortex, that little circle of air current that keeps cold air in the Arctic North, that getting weaker because of climate change means that there's more times where that will dip down, which is why in certain states, like when I lived in Michigan, of the 3 years that I were there, 2 years we had polar vortexes. And that is one example of the way that climate change is going to completely disrupt our weather systems. But for things, things where you can control when you plant them out, like annuals, it might hurt, but farmers can adapt. And again, this is still within, no farmer that I know has planted out tomatoes yet. However, next weekend is when they normally would. Here's the thing though, fruit, shrubs, perennials, nuts, all of those sorts of things where our food system is dependent on perennial crops, not annual crops. And even sometimes when it is dependent on annual crops and we have, say, a June snowstorm, which hasn't happened, but it could, that will disrupt our entire food supply. Of the 5 largest fruit farms on the western slope of Colorado where I live, 3 of them have already announced that they had total crop loss from a freeze that happened last week because the peaches, the plums, all of these different fruits started to develop so much earlier than normal. Normally by right now, things are starting to bud and flower. They already had half-developed peaches on their trees as of last weekend. And then a hard spring freeze hit and all of those died. And the tree isn't going to put out more flowers to make more peaches. That just is their crop for the year, completely done. Their income, completely lost. And so when we talk about climate change, yes, we're talking about, things being on average warmer, but we're also talking about the massive disruptions to normal weather patterns that completely alter the way plants function, which in turn alters our food system. So what can we do about it? Ask your elected representatives to fucking take it seriously. Become a single issue voter on climate, because this is something that affects literally everyone, whether you're rich, poor, white, black, doesn't matter. The climate affects everyone. And it also affects people of color and people who live in poverty and people in the global south much more severely than it will affect rich white people in the global north, just due to distribution of resources and safety nets. So if you're going to be a single issue voter, pick this issue and also learn how to grow food. Support your local farmers. Support local resources to make sure that you and your community can continue to be fed, and we can build in resilience so that when there's massive crop failure on a global scale because we grow crops that are used by everyone in the world in like 2 places, when that inevitably has a natural disaster, we have resilience built in within our communities. Anyways, this is getting really long. Thank you for listening.